welcome.
Thank you for my card. That's me. Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're happy to have Gary doing this one today.
Yeah, it's always good. Always enjoy shooting these. They're always nice. I was like, the last one I was at was what they were talking about Ukraine.
Oh yeah.
The younger guy, I learned a lot just by the people on the panel.
That was a good panel.
Great.
Yeah, that was a good panel. They were all Ohio State folks.
Yeah, that was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
A lot of good brains.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll compliment Amy, guys. The audio is always great here. You guys
You do a good job. Yeah, CTV is Lotus TV.
Yeah.
That's our partner.
Yeah.
No one wants me running the soundboard.
I appreciate that because not everywhere you go, the audio is like. Usually about half the time it's good. Other 30% of the time it's so-so, and then you get 1 out of 10 that's like, you gotta tell them how to like make it better. But they're always great here.
Yeah.
Every time.
Professionals right here.
Yeah, they're awesome. They do a great job.
You guys are getting good compliments over here. Well done.
Village, with average attendance of more than 200 people. I'm Tony Bell, and I frequently attend forums, which are open to everyone and present relevant, current, and newsworthy topics. I'm grateful that CMC is nonpartisan and presents many perspectives on every topic.
I'm Jane Scott, President and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club. CMC is open to everyone. We invite you to explore the personal and professional benefits awaiting you at the Metropolitan Club. Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Welcome to CMC.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. Founded in 1976 by 13 visionary women leaders, CMC's mission is to connect people and ideas through community conversation. From its beginning, CMC has welcomed everyone. I'm Neil Juris, Senior Director of Communications and Engagement for the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. You also know us as MORPC. I'm also a member of the CMC Board of Trustees. Let's begin by meeting our newest CMC member, Jake Basil from COSI. If you're here, please stand. If not, we'll still welcome you. If you're not already a CMC member, we encourage you to join. It's easy to do through CMC's website. May is CMC Membership Month. If you're a CMC member, please take a moment to look inside your name tags. You'll find a special thank you in there from us. You've heard there's no such thing as a free lunch, but there is. Every week in May, we will be providing a free lunch card to members attending the forum. You can use the card to bring a friend to an upcoming CMC forum for free. Just present the card to the lucky colleague, and they can follow the instructions to register to attend a CMC forum for free, either with you or on their own. So please also take a moment to look at the back of your forum, on the back of your forum flyers. You'll see the organizations that provide the nonprofit Columbus Metropolitan Club with half of its annual revenue. To join this list of generous sponsors, please see Jane Scott or Lainey Cathbert in the rear. Speaking of sponsors, thank you to today's sponsors, the Edwards Companies, Homeport, NBC4, the Robert Weiler Company, and Steiner Associates. Today's live stream is presented by the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch. Let's thank all of those supporting today's forum. Can a new project in Columbus provide hope and housing for the homeless by building a community that fosters employment and independent living? Vista Village is an affordable housing project aiming to do just that. Central to the Vista Village model are 41 tiny houses, a community center, and a garden, a park, and green space. Today, our panel will discuss this initiative and explore how Vista Village might serve as a model for other communities struggling to address the nation's homeless crisis. So please welcome Sandy Doyle-Ahern, Sandy Stevenson, John Perez, and Carrie Charles, and our host, Carrie Charles, weeknight anchor with NBC4. You can learn more about today's speakers in your forum flyer. Carrie, we look forward to today's conversation. So enjoy.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Neil. So I have to start by asking, who watched This Is Us? Let's show of hands. Show of hands. The general manager, news director here, they want to know who's watching NBC. If you missed last night's This Is Us, it was amazing. It was a great episode. And you just go back and start from season 1. We have one more, there's a reason I'm talking about This Is Us, by the way. But there's one more episode, so we hope you will join us for the grand finale next week on NBC4. It is next week, right? Next week. Colleen would not appreciate that. The reason I thought about This Is Us because there's a character, Uncle Nicky, who was in Vietnam, and then after the war, he went off into a wooded area and kind of just hid in this mobile home. and he was away from the world. And as I was watching last night to see how much progress he made in his personal life, I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's perfect. A perfect way to lead into today's discussion as we think about oftentimes veterans who find themselves in situations where they need homes and they need resources and they need the community to back them. So here we are today talking about Vista Village. And so I'm thinking about Uncle Nicky the entire way. So if I mention Uncle Nicky again, I don't have an Uncle Nicky. It's just on This Is Us. I want to start with John. I was asking you just a few moments ago, we were talking about you can look at me right now, John, you can turn. We got directions from Doug just a moment ago who said, make sure to focus on the audience. I was talking to you about the excitement of this venture, this adventure. This is a life-changing effort and it's gonna make a difference in the community. Talk about how this came about.
First of all, it's great to be here. I mean, I never thought in 2019 that we would be sitting talking to about Vista Village to the community leaders in Columbus. Vista Village is really a calling for me. Back in December 2018, our firm got a lawsuit, and it involved having the city asking our client to remove a homeless camp that was on their property. And to be honest, I didn't think much about it. I went about my business, gave the lawsuit to one of my lawyers and said, keep me informed. And then January came and my wife and I, my wife's right there, sitting right in white, the beautiful woman there. My wife and I went to Florida for 6 weeks, but I work in Florida. So the third week in January 2019, I had to come back for business. And Joan says, hey, remember to turn the thermostat up because it's cold in the house. And I said, sure, no problem. So I got to Columbus that night on Monday night, and it was cold. It was in the teens. I do remember that, and it was dark. I took over to the house, and the first thing I did, as a good husband does, is turn the thermostat up, right? So I did, and then I went to bed. Tuesday morning, I got up, and the first thing I did was get up in the morning and go to check the thermostat. And I'm not a thermostat checker. I kid people. I said, that's not within my domain in the house. That's within my wife's domain. And so I went to check the thermostat. And the first thought that came to my mind was, it's nice and warm in here. And then the second thought was, what about the homeless? And that question hit me like a 2x4. And I began to research, went to the office and I talked to the individuals that was handling my lawsuit. I said, what's going on here? Come to find out, the residents that were now living on our client's property had once lived on another company's property. The city had sued them. They had bulldozed their property, and now they were doing the same thing to the new residents on the new property. So I began to research, what have we done in Columbus about homelessness, and is there a way to really help the homeless population in an environment? And that's how the journey started, 2019. Along the way, a lot of individuals came together and helped support the cause. And even now, they continue to help bring the vision to reality.
To what John said, because I think it's important for people here to hear what he said about camp removal. Many camps in Columbus have been removed, and they continue to be removed. And every time a camp is removed, generally the land is bulldozed, and sometimes people's only belongings are still on that land. And effectively what happens is that we are taking away what people consider to be their homes when that occurs. And we are taking away many times their own neighborhoods and established camps. And coming out of the mental health field, I want to say to all of you, the impact on people's mental health when that occurs is extremely significant. And there are reasons that these camps are removed. I'm not going to defend why they should or shouldn't be, but that does remove a person's neighborhood and the place they've considered their home.
Could you talk more about that, though? Some of the effects, the mental health, the trauma that folks carry with them as a result of such a change?
Well, it's traumatic. One, the first time you find yourself homeless. If you're evicted, it's traumatic. If you find yourself homeless, it's traumatic. Those are mental health issues. People lose dignity. When people have no place to live and they choose to live on the land, that seems to be their only option. And then they go through the worrying constantly about camp removal, or they don't perhaps want to be in the camp they're in. They want to be in a different camp. There's all kinds of issues that goes on in the encampment community. You're disenfranchised. As a human being, you have lost value, and you begin to see yourself as a person who does not carry value and dignity. And I think if we all consider ourselves and the value we put on human dignity, our own dignity, and the value we put on knowing we're a person of value, you really have to understand what happens when those things get stripped away from people.
I think we're going to revisit mental health and the resources throughout this afternoon. Sandy, your involvement in this project.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today. My involvement probably comes from a different angle to get to this particular project. So I've been involved in working with homeless situations for a long time, probably about 15 years or more. And one of the things that's really important to understand about our community is we actually have an incredibly robust, well-meaning nonprofit, government, and private business sector that want to try to solve this problem. But what's happening is we have tremendous market pressures, and this is prior to this year. This has been going on actually for a long time, that are affecting housing affordability across the landscape. And so what's happened with our homeless situation is that we tend to think about this as populations of people. We think about homelessness with families. We think about it with individual men, with individual women. This project is specific to veterans. So there's a lot to talk about here, but with this particular project, it just speaks to me because anything that we can do to try to move the needle for establishing some sense of stability for people is deeply important. And we have to understand in this community that while we have incredibly wonderful things going on, we also have to work a lot harder to create pathways for opportunity for people. The only other thing I want to say, because I think it's an important establishment point about homelessness, if you've ever been around families or people who find themselves in that situation, it's important to realize where they've come from and how they got there. Most people do not come into homelessness because they're vagrant or begging on the street corner. That is absolutely a misnomer, and it's just simply not the truth. Most people find themselves in difficult circumstances. Often they're employed. Often they're just not able to make ends meet. We see incredible racism in homelessness, and we have to confront that. So I just want to put that out there because we have to create pathways not only for housing, but for employment, mental health, and all the things that come with creating a stable life for people. So I've been doing this for a long time, and this is just an exciting project that John got off the ground, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
How have you seen things change within the last 2 years, especially as we talk about the weight of the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the pandemic, really what it did was just accentuate what was already happening. So we have a situation where we have neighborhood destabilization. We have great economic opportunity, but not necessarily connectivity to that opportunity. And so as we moved through an incredibly difficult time that we've all had our own challenges with, what we're seeing is the outcome of the lack of access to particularly electronic systems. So if you're, as we all know, if you're in school or you're at work and you can't access your job or your school, we're seeing a widened gap on that front. And that leads to other widened gaps. We have tremendous food insecurity right now, and the housing market being what it is, has really put a point on this issue that is deeper and bigger than anything we knew before the pandemic. And I'm telling you, it affects every single one of us in this room. So as we talk about housing, we really shouldn't be talking about affordable housing, because that's a misnomer. What's affordable to me may not be affordable to someone else. We have to talk about housing in general, and that gap has widened even more significantly. On the flip side, we've had tremendous opportunity. So what's happening in the Columbus region right now is so incredible, and we have got to work really hard to create those synergies between the problems and the opportunities.
So what's been the reception from the community, from leaders, as you all talked about this project, John? You said you wanted to do it. You started to plant seeds. Oftentimes when initiatives arise dealing with helping people who are homeless on a larger scale, it's frowned upon in many ways. I mean, that's just the truth.
Yeah, I think when we first started, of course, you start with a concept, you start with a plan, and then you begin to put some real substance around it. And as we moved along, we began to form a concrete plan. We researched what was happening in other communities with respect to housing while they were addressing it. Columbus was doing what a lot of communities are doing, the same spectrum. And then we also looked at innovation. What are other cities doing with respect to housing when it comes to communities? And what we really fell upon was the dignity that a tiny home provides, and the fact that we were trying to move people forward from homelessness to employment and hopefully home ownership, which is really what all of us want in life eventually, you know, from the opportunity we have before us. So I think we spent 2019 planning, 2020 came along and we started continuing to plan some more. The first thing we did with our plan was we started, after we formulated it in March 2020, we began to meet with the individuals who were serving the homeless community. And we vetted what we were doing, our concept, our thoughts, what we designed, we vetted it with them. They gave us some information, they gave us feedback, and we reformulated what we were doing. So by the time we went to the business community, we already had a concrete plan of what we wanted to do, where we wanted to go, the vision of what the village was going to look like, and how individuals were going to be coming in and transformed and eventually graduating from the village. When we went, and then we also then went to government, and the government was very receptive because we had the support of business behind us. When we started, our estimated budget is $6 million. When we started raising money, people were asking us, what's government doing about it? So of course, the homelessness is not just a government problem, it's a community problem, as Sandy says, but it's also a business community problem as well, not just an individual problem. So we began to get support from the business community, and then they asked the questions, and we said, well, we'll make it a public-private partnership. So we went to government, and we're asking government, state, local, and federal, and county to come up with $2 million out of our $6 million budget. And they've been very receptive. The commissioners, the council members, the legislatures considering our requests to them, that's been really super supportive of that. But even more astounding to us was support from the community. We live in a very philanthropic community that really cares about Columbus and cares about the people in Columbus. And they've been super, super supportive. I mean, on $4 million, we already have, we have 27 houses already sponsored of the 41, and we need 14 more. So it's been a phenomenal support from the private sector and the business community. Now we're hoping that government likewise steps up and helps us with the project. Because we're trying to create a model that can be replicated. It's not just a single one little village. We're trying to be very deliberate so that we can create a model that other cities and other parts of Columbus can also implement.
John, can I want to add one quick point, and without dragging everybody into the details, one of the things that made it difficult to get it off the ground, though, was a particular policy issue. So if you have ever tried to do any kind of development in this region, you know it's difficult. It is not an easy thing to do. You might think it is, but it actually is not. And a lot of that is a result of policies and practices that are in place that need to be revisited, many of which are happening in Columbus and in some of the suburbs. But I want to make sure we're clear about that, because oftentimes people look at developers and say, well, why don't they just go do it? And I'm telling you, it is not that simple. So this project had a little bit of an early snag we had to get through, and we did. But it took a little bit of finagling to overcome a policy issue that was actually quite small, but could have stopped the project. So I just want to be clear as we talk about this, that there are a lot of avenues to getting this work done, but we've got to all be working together to really work on policy issues as well.
Let me jump into that same topic. Dealing with public officials can be very challenging for the reasons that you said, and many other reasons. I started working on meetings with public officials in around 2018, as I refer to now as BC, before COVID. So we all have to think about that. But they listened. But in our community, a lot of money is given to the Community Shelter Board. Public money goes that direction, and it is well spent. It is needed. When we started showing people pictures of camps that had been bulldozed and started showing community officials pictures of tiny villages in other communities that don't have plumbing, because that's key. Tiny villages are in many cities in the country, they don't have plumbing. There was one model in particular that could be built for about $7,900 a piece. It's a Conestoga wagon. It's on wheels. That's how this community got around the code about a tiny house. They used seriously, they used Conestoga wagons, and it worked. But there was interest, but there was always a statement, if it doesn't have plumbing, it's not going to happen in Columbus, Ohio. And I said, people are living out in camps that the city hasn't sanctioned, and they don't have plumbing. And you don't even put porta pots out there for folks. You don't even put trash receptacles out there for folks. Well, if we did that, we'd be sanctioning camps. And then people downtown, and I get it, they got upset because homeless folks come downtown. And if you're coming out of a camp or you're coming out of a shelter and you're downtown, where's the toilets? We started talking to the city 10 years ago about public toilets downtown. 10 years later, we're finally going to get them. And you think again about the human dignity of people and what it must be like to leave a shelter or leave a camp in the morning, get on a bus, get off, and have no place to go to the toilet. Not in a restaurant, not in a building, and no public toilets downtown. We are going to have them now. So progress occurs, it's slow. It's been very slow. Thank you.
And to your point,
If I can just add.
go for it.
Our houses do have toilets. We were fortunate when we knew that we were developing something that was going to be different in Columbus. We knew that we had to have the right piece of real estate. We had looked at other real estate. The infrastructure expense was very expensive. The zoning laws would be very time-consuming and expensive as well. So we were really blessed that we found a piece of real estate that would have been owned by a developer, a residential developer, and they had laid out the infrastructure. They had already put all the lots together. So when we started the process, we started basically following what was already approved. So we left minimal obstacles for any city official or any government official to object to what we're doing. And our houses, they're 420 square feet home, modular construction, all wood construction on a frame. They do have a toilet and a shower, and they do also have a kitchen and a bedroom area. Because in our mind, if we're going to move people forward, they have to learn how to live on their own. They learn how to cook their own meals, how to wash their own clothes, how to clean their rooms, how to make a bed, all the basics that many of us take for granted. We want to train our residents to do that. So that's part of what we have. So in our village, phase one, the 41 tiny homes, they're all going to be, the standard that we've been using is, if I don't want to live there, our residents are not going to live there either. So we are moving forward with hopefully, full blast, trying to make sure that the place where they live is a place of dignity, because we want them to focus on moving forward from where they are.
Sandy, I was going to touch on, and you leaned into this, but this is a quality of life issue that we need to keep in mind as we make these changes to help folks in our community.
Absolutely. I think we all appreciate this terminology, quality of life, and most of us can define what it means to us. And it means many things. It's health. It's the ability to have an income and to be able to have options about things we want in life. It's the ability to have friends. It's the ability to even invite somebody over for dinner or be invited over to someone else's house for dinner. And I believe truly that's what Vista Village is going to deliver to folks that haven't had this experience of quality, real quality in their lives for years and years and years, and maybe not even thought about how to define it. So that will be an opportunity for people. It will be redefined in their lives. And we're just very excited that this is happening in Columbus, Ohio.
Talk about some of the resources within the community, and how did you all choose and decide the different amenities, if you will, that will go into this community? We have a community garden, green space, the community center.
Yes, what we wanted to create was a real community, not just houses. And part of living in a community is what, if you go to most neighborhoods, at least outside, into the better areas, you're going to have a park, you're going to have green space, you're going to have a nice walk path. So we wanted to do the same thing in Columbus. We were very blessed again because the land that we bought already had a park designated. So we said that's the park that's already been designated, 2-acre park, that'll be a park. And I should say that one of the things that helped us it's not a John Perez effort, it's a community effort. One of our first persons to be involved was Yarmer Steiner, and Yarmer took it upon himself to be a co-developer with us, and he brought Sandy along, he brought other individuals along. So we're really putting a nice touch on the product. So the park was there. We wanted a place where individuals could have a park and actually relax, just like most of us do. We wanted a shelter so that we could have cookouts. We wanted a community center, which is the heart of the operation, because the community center is where the services are going to be provided and community is going to be formed. We didn't want our residents to get on a bus and travel 3 or 4 hours to go to a counseling session. We wanted our residents to go to a counseling session on site and then spend the rest of the time really focusing on how do they improve life for themselves. Do you have a GED? No. Well, let's help you get a GED in the community center. Do you need job training? Let's help you get a job training and partner with other people, members of the community. So everything became very organic in that we were constructing a community of individuals. We also, the design is a gated community. That means we have individuals, our residents can come and go, individuals coming in who have to sign in. And the reason that was important to us to have a gated community was to provide for the safety of our residents that have been traumatized. We wanted them to live in a safe environment. But the other thing that we wanted to do was bring volunteers in. Volunteers are going to be the heart of the operation as well. So by having a gated community, we have a safe environment for volunteers to come in and be with our residents, whether it be the community center or as Sandy just said, if they want to come in and live and have coffee with one of the residents or more of the residents, they're able to share either in the community center or in their home. So we really wanted that, like I said, the standard of if you don't want to live in it, we don't want our residents to live in there either. But they wanted to have same opportunities that we have to be able to have others come and visit and form relationship with us. We really feel that if we're going to change the way people think about the homeless, they're going to have to come in and get to know them. And the stories behind them, as already mentioned, is a lot broader than these people not having a place to live. Something happened to them, they were impacted, and they find themselves in this unfortunate situation. We have to know them as people that they are, and they have to know us as well, that we as community members do care about them, we want to be involved with them, and we really want them to have success.
What about the other communities? I know Kansas City was one of the communities where you did some focus on. What didn't work in Kansas City, or that you didn't want to include in this project?
Well, in Kansas City, it's called the Veterans Project. Among the villages we visited was Kansas City. What we liked about them was that they actually are transitional housing, and they actually want to move people forward. Their success rate is 85%. So that's going to be our benchmark of individuals that come into the village. 85% of them ultimately leave within 18 to 24 months and find employment. So we set our benchmark as being that number. The thing about the Veterans Project, by its name, it's for veterans only. So we thought we wanted to have a more diverse community at Vista Village. So we're looking for individuals from different population groups, veterans included, but those individuals returning to society from incarceration, they need help, or they end up getting in trouble, individuals who are working in a recovery program from some type of addiction, kids aging out of foster care to the extent that we can help them, and then individuals, which was our primary touch point, living in the camps who want to move out. I mean, I was really touched when I went to visit the camps. And if you've never gone to a camp, it's quite an experience. We went to one of the camps, and we were talking to a gentleman there who lived with an older woman part of the camp and a younger man. And during the conversation, he says, "Hey, I got to go now. I got to go to work." And I said, "You have to go to work?" He says, "Yeah, I got to go to work." And he pointed to which he was going. That's the kind of people that you really want to help. I mean, that person is motivated to move forward. They need a helping hand. And Vista Village is going to be a place that we give people the helping hand that they need to succeed.
There is an amazing effort in Austin, Texas that you ought to look at. I believe it's called Fishes and Loaves or Loaves and Fishes, but it started out as tiny village without plumbing, but a large commissary with showers and toilets, which is how most of them were developed. And phase one was so successful. The community around it really didn't want it initially. There was fear about what might happen with those people moving into our community. it was so successful that they were able to move on to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and they have more planned. And actually, crime does not take place in the surrounding areas. The gentleman that I had the opportunity to talk to who manages there said, if there's any crime, it's people in the neighborhood coming into the tiny village sometimes. But it's just been an amazing effort of people coming together, and it really has made a significant difference in the number of people that are in camps and on the streets in Austin as homeless.
Sandy, you talked about challenges that this effort faced on the legislative side with policy. What are some of the other challenges you all encountered bringing this to life?
Well, I think I'm going to talk globally in answering that question about kind of addressing housing in general. There's the number one problem with getting housing done is the NIMBY syndrome, the not in my backyard. We all know it. We live it. And we have to be willing to be more open to addressing opportunity for all kinds of people, which means building housing of all types in all parts of our region, not just Columbus, but suburbs and so forth. So challenges, something John said early on, I guess I want to backdrop to, because it's really critical. And I want to make sure this point wasn't overlooked. He made the comment about the fact that this particular piece of land was already ready to develop. That is huge. The fact that it was already zoned, it was prepared to be a development previously, it didn't go forward, but it was set up for this. A lot of times trying to do, whether it's affordable housing, market rate housing, whatever it is, that is not the case. So I want to be clear about it, because challenges really have to do with how we treat each other. Truthfully, that is what it comes down to. So when there's an attempt to try to do housing of all kinds, one of the things that happens is that if we're in a situation where we don't have the great fortune to find a piece of ground that is ready to go, which I will tell you in this region is near impossible at this point, the way we're growing, then we have to be open to something changing in our neighborhood to allow housing of all kinds to occur. One of the very commonly understood things about our region is that because of the lack of diversity of housing, people who can actually afford to rent or buy more will rent down. And the reason they do that is because it gives them more disposable income. Makes sense. But what's happening then is people who can only afford in that particular range have no housing to go to. So this is a systemic problem. It's not a theory. We know this about the data. So the challenges really come to being open-minded as our community grows to allow other people to come in and give them the lift that they might need. And I think that challenge is less about policy and more about how we're willing to grow and treat each other.
And that's what I was getting to earlier, talking about the reception, that not in my backyard, that has to be a challenge as you all, this plan sounds like it's going to be a success, but how do you expand that into other communities dealing with that notion?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of people trying all the time. So, I think it's probably about approaching people in various neighborhoods who are already existing residents and educating people about the opportunity to bring other residents. And this does not mean opening doors to people you don't want to be around. That is just not, that's a misnomer. This is really about opening doors to people who want the same things that we all do. Raise a family, have a good job, have a safe place to go, be able to flush the toilet. So, some communities are embracing that really well. Reynoldsburg, Whitehall, doing tremendous work around this right now and having great success because they're creating the pathway and the doors to allow that to happen. Other communities are challenged with it. And I think we're just going to have to continue to be willing to talk about it and try to move projects along. The last thing I'd say about it is it's fear. I mean, the reason projects get killed all the time is because people think there's something bad going to happen. And as Sandy pointed out, the data will tell you that is absolutely not the case. Once we build those projects, people find out they have nice new neighbors that they're willing to get to know. So we've just got to keep the door open for each other.
Yeah.
If I can add on the obstacles. When we first started in 2019, first developing Lexi Rogers, who's over there, was one of the people that had been with us from the beginning. She did a lot of the research on what was going on in other communities, and we did look at community first in Austin, Texas, as Sandy mentioned. I got two Sandys, Sandy 1 and Sandy 2. But community first was they had communal toilets, communal kitchens, they had RVs in their park, and so when we looked at that and we approached the city initially in 2019, they said no wheels, and we'll look at it. So we started developing something that would fit within the parameters that they had. Our biggest obstacle, the city's been wonderful because as was mentioned, we already zoned for what we're going to use it for, and we have the infrastructure. Our biggest obstacle is having the community, the leaders think differently than they've been thinking, because a lot of the thought in Columbus is around apartment complexes. And so we come in with tiny homes, and they're not used to tiny homes. I mean, tiny homes, Ann Bishop is here. She touched on tiny homes a long time ago, even before I started talking about them. And she ran into her own obstacles. So what happens is people are comfortable with apartment complexes dealing with homelessness, and you come in with a different idea and they don't understand it. I mean, we have to explain to individuals why tiny homes we believe are a good environment, provide dignity, and can be constructed perhaps even less than apartment complexes. So, but if you build an apartment complex, people readily agree to that because they've seen them go up. So our challenge is just having people think about addressing homelessness in an environment that provides dignity, but different than an apartment complex. That's been our biggest challenge. But the community, the business community, has been very receptive, and the government officials who we've talked to have also been receptive to tiny homes at Vista Village. And of course, our goal is to create a model that can be duplicated so that we address the issues, and hopefully we can have other tiny homes in Columbus and other parts of Ohio. And I think that if we can succeed in our village and prove that yes, property values, we're going to go up. There's no crime that's going to come in, not going to be impacted, and people are going to succeed. We're hoping that by establishing meeting those goals, that then other parts of Columbus and Ohio will be receptive to this type of concept.
And I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge that all of the above is needed. Apartments can be a really good thing. They're needed. More is needed. Tiny villages, tiny homes are a wonderful option for many people. They're needed. More is needed. Allowing people to move into our neighborhoods who are different from us, who may value different things, may worship differently, or are different people. We need to learn as human beings to open up to each other, to be kinder. There's a lot of lip service to that. So as we don't necessarily do it with each other, it's easy to imagine why it's been hard for people to envision different types of housing that have different appeals to different people. And it's something we all need to commit to together. And I will say again, as a mental health person, it is the mentally healthy thing to do.
We will begin taking questions from the audience on the live stream, and then from you all here. The microphone is set up in the back, so be sure to go back and get your questions thrown in if you have any. They're running up already. There we go. We like to see that. How can our audience hear the folks watching at home in their offices? How can they get involved in an effort such as Vista Village?
I'll take that one. First of all, I mean, I think you have to talk up the project. I'll let people know that you support something like this kind of concept. Right now, we really need your help with the government officials because they're considering budget items, and that's 1/3 of our budget, of our effort, the funds that we need to construct. Both, so call council members. We met with all of them. They've been very receptive. The commissioners, we met with all of them. They've been very receptive, and we met with senators and representatives in my governor's office. But just as us, if you get involved, that'll help a lot. And of course, eventually, we're still trying to raise money. So get involved and get to know us and help us out.
And I know we're going to take questions. I just want to add a broad stroke to that question. I appreciate you asking it, Carrie. So there are at least 17 organizations in our region that are doing homeless housing. And it is everything from youth which are, if you think about it, if you are a young person who's aged out of the foster system, you can be incredibly good at hiding in this community. So we have a hard time sometimes counting that group, but we believe it's somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people. We have homeless families, we have homeless men and women. And so in our region, just understand as we grow, statistically speaking, we're going to continue to have more and more people in need of this. So we have lots of opportunities in the community to get involved if it's something you're interested in. And if you don't want to do direct service, then the next time something comes to your neighborhood, stand up and speak in support of it and welcome your neighbors.
And I would also say to that, when you encounter a person who's homeless on the streets, downtown, wherever you are, maintain eye contact. Don't drop your eyes. Don't walk around them like they aren't a human being. Say hello. You'll be surprised at who our fellow citizens are who live in this community with us.
I think what's important, what you just said, is a person who is homeless. We always say a homeless person.
Yes.
A person who's homeless. We're people first. It's CMC's longstanding tradition to take some questions from the audience. Doug is back there. He's ready to go. You got some questions?
I do, Carrie. Thank you very much. And thank you to today's panelists. I also just would like to say a thank you to Harvey Hook for bringing today's topic to CMC's attention. Thank you very much, Harvey. This is a terrific conversation. So our first question was submitted in advance during the registration process by Stephen Levin, and he's got a couple of questions here. I'll throw out a couple. One is, will the proposed location for Vista Village be on a 24/7 bus line? And second part to that is, will the community center host vocational training opportunities? And what will those training opportunities be initially, if yes?
The answer to the first question is yes. I mean, there is a bus line. I don't know what's 24/7, but we are off Refugee Road. There are two bus stops right next to the village, one at the west side and one on the east side. They go east and then two more on the other west side. So there are bus routes. One of the things that we learned walking homeless camps and looking for property was that you needed a bus route for our residents to be able to move around. The next question, the community center vocational training or employment training, yes, we have community partners who we're partnering with that'll help us take advantage of vocational training. We're also fortunate in that the property is located like half a mile from First Church of God, and they have vocational training on site. They're opening their doors to our residents as well, so that they can come and train. And usually theirs is like the trades or crafts, which is what we're looking for. We're looking to have our residents train in positions that are going to give them a livable wage, not just any job. So, and then we have other financial supporters that are saying to us, we will come pick them up, take them to our training facility. For example, one of our supporters is a gentleman, Bruce Daniels. He owns the automotive distributorships. And has a facility on Morris Road. And he says, I'll pick up the residents interested in learning about automotive, whether body shop or mechanics. I'll pick them up at the village and we'll take them and pay them to be trained. And then we'll take them back. And then when they graduate from the village, we'll look to hire them as well. So we're doing those kind of partnerships as well.
We'll take a question from the audience. Just a reminder, please keep your questions brief and to the point.
Well, thank you. My dad used to say that a skilled craftsman is like having a Rhodes Scholar and an athletic scholar all rolled up into one. And he was a leader of a corporation, not a boss. In other words, he considered everybody that worked for him to have one brain, two eyes, and two ears, and he tried to inspire them to work together as a unit. And I saw that profit many people, many times. But I asked him why he invested so much into veterans and people in the community. And he said, because, son, everything that we invest in the community comes back to us. Now we have people that think, well, there's only so much brick and I got to have it all, you know. If our country is only as strong as the weakest brick on the wall, You can't pile your gold up on top and expect it to stand forever. This is a subject that after I retired, I traveled Europe and countries and studied their architectural design and discovered that we use 7 times more energy heating and cooling than many Germany and some of the other countries do when they're building their houses. So when I remodeled my first house, I added half the square footage onto it, cut the heating and cooling costs for the whole house in half. So it goes to show it can be done. But I used to work in engineering traffic standards, and my dad and my grandfather worked together during the 50s to put 24 feet of UV light in a return air duct, because you wanted one of those in the heating supply to filter the air from viruses that they were contending with back then.
I know
And
you have it sounds like a lot of experience in this realm. Can you drive us toward the question? Just for sake of time, we're going to run out of here in just a moment.
well, I wish I could partner with some of you guys, because I think you're right in the field I'm interested in.
Well, I tell you what we'll do. I think we'll be sticking around just for a bit. A few of us will be hanging around. That way we can exchange cards and talk and have some discussion about what we can do and partner. So appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Charlie Bauer. My question is, when does it open, and what does short-term and longer-term success look like? Thanks.
Well, right now what we're doing is finalizing our plans to submit to the city. It'll be a second round of plans. This is a full-blown application, and we feel confident that since we're developing in accordance with the already existing plans, it'll be minimal comments. We're being pretty aggressive on this. My wife says I'm impatient. I probably am. We're pushing to develop the community center and at least 1 or 2 houses by the fall. Because the community center, we need that because it'll be the heart of the operation. Once we do that, then we'll use the houses to further fundraise what we need for the village. And then the plan is to, in the spring, begin to put houses 6 or 10 at a time, get it all constructed, and then we'll begin to bring residents in phases, 6 to 10 residents. They'll be in there for 4 to 6 weeks, so they can get acclimated to the rules that the village is going to have, the expectations that exist. And then once the first 6 or 10 are ready to go, then bring the other individuals at a similar time period. So kind of a phase in. My goal is that we want to avoid at least 41 individuals being out in the cold in the wintertime in 2023. So that's kind of our goal.
Thank you. Steve Swift asks, what's the average annual cost projected towards supporting a tenant in Vista Village? And how does that compare to supporting someone on the land for a year?
So I can address the first question. What we have done is we have spoken and done their due diligence with other villages across the country. And the expense, operating expense, is about $6,000 per house per year. And that includes, in our case, utilities, everything that's needed. We've also vetted that number with local groups here that have vertical apartments and asked them what their operating expense is. And it's pretty much consistent, about $6,000 per month, per year, per house or per unit. So we're going with that number for the village as well.
Let me just add, with regard to the expense of supporting people on the land, we don't support people on the land in our community. Volunteer organizations take food out. Folks take receptacles out sometimes so trash can be picked up, but we really, in our community, are not providing supports to people on the land.
Hi, John Hollins with Gebben Communication. And to piggyback on your point, Sandy, my question is, do you have a plan for homelessness prevention and resources around that, and potentially partnering with some of the nonprofits? I believe one of the Sandys mentioned something about the Community Shelter Board, so seeing if there are partnerships in place for that.
We have MOUs in place with different agencies that we're partnering with, referral agencies that are sending us residents along with a case plan for each resident. So we have those partnerships. We have Community Shelter Board functions under a different model than we do. They use a housing first model. So we see ourselves as augmenting what they're doing for those residents that are ready to move out and live and want a second chance to move on. So so we have reached out to them, and their supporters are our supporters as well.
And I really appreciate your question. So I'm going to add one point to it. We do not want to keep building shelter in this community. It is absolutely not the right thing to do. We have got to build housing for what we term as rapid rehousing in the homelessness business, and there is a business to homelessness, shockingly. I will tell you from the standpoint of some of the other shelters that are operating, the cost to operate these is almost untenable at this point. I'm very involved in the YWCA. Some of you probably know that. We do family housing and single women housing. We are having to raise millions of dollars privately to keep that shelter open. So we cannot keep doing that. We have got, to your point about partnering, going back to housing, we've got to build the housing for people to live, not the shelter system.
And you mentioned prevention of homelessness. That is such an upstream issue. We're all downstream providing services right now to prevent homelessness. We need to go so far upstream to look at the issues already mentioned: poverty, racism, education, lack of opportunity for people, and the ability for us, again, to look at each other as fellow human beings and to assist. Columbus has really increased its evictions again. It dropped significantly during the pandemic because of law, but the evictions are back. They're alive, they're well, they're happening in Columbus, Ohio. Evictions are downstream. They lead to more homelessness.
Thank you. I think we have time for two more questions. I'll start with one from the live stream audience. Key Barnes asks, will the Vista Village support personnel be full-time paid staff? There needs to be a commitment that will support this, and it needs to be available long-term, but will there be full-time paid staff at Vista Village?
The answer to that is yes. We plan to have full staff. Questions have been asked, for example, like, do you plan to have 24/7 security? And the answer is no. The villages that we have visited do not have 24/7 security. They basically implement guidelines and expect the residents to rise up to that level, which I think that I'm of that belief that if you tell people this is the expectation of conduct, they will rise to that level. But we do have to we will have paid staff. We also want to leverage volunteers. I mean, when I started the project and thinking about it, I thought it would be great if somebody wrote me a check for $6 million. But then I realized that that would not accomplish the goal of having community involvement. It's having people like Bob and the Weiler and his family that are involved that bring other resources to us. So we're raising it, Bob said, the hard way, but it's the better way to do it than just writing a check, in our opinion.
Hi, my name is Leah Boyd. My original question you kind of hit on about those centers being a large sum of money to keep up and things like that. I'm working with an organization who is currently trying to build almost a system of a halfway place to house those homeless people in the midst of providing those housings. But in that process, we're realizing that once you tell someone what you're trying to do with the property that you're looking at, the price value somehow exceeds. And as you guys mentioned, you guys face some difficulties in those situations with politicians or just property owners and things like that. What are some strategies you guys were able to accomplish to get those, to get that village up and going?
What we did is, what we've been doing is coming up with the concept itself and showing what the final product's going to look like, and then sharing that with individuals who have asked questions. We're waiting to have a meeting with a full-blown community until the city approves our plans, because we don't want to waffle on what's going on. But individuals have come to us and asked us questions about what are you doing, and neighbors, and we've advised them and we showed them what we're doing. And in fact, if you want to go online after the presentation, we have a video that and PowerPoint you can look at the product itself. So once we tell them what we're doing, the support services, the fact that we're not just anybody's going to come in there, that it's going to be a safe community, they're very receptive. I mean, we're laying the groundwork for success with them, talking to them in advance and letting them know that we want to be partners with them and want to improve the value of their property as well, based on what we have found in other villages.
Yeah, and it's a great question. So I would add to that, the nonprofit community cannot solve this problem. We cannot put this on the backs of the nonprofits. The nonprofit organizations are deeply important to having the mission and the heart to do the work. But my suggestion to you is get the private businesses involved. The business owners, leaders, I don't care who they are, they need employees, especially right now. They need to care about the character of the communities that they're working in. And when the private businesses get involved and understand that doing this work helps them too, they're very quick and eager to partner with the nonprofits. And by the way, that is happening tremendously here. It's a whole other topic for CMC we could talk about how to do this. But it's really, really important, because just telling the story doesn't resonate with everybody. You have to show them the link from the economic side on why it matters.
Awesome question there. We're going to recruit you for the news department. She works upstairs with all the muckety mucks at the station. I do want to take 30 seconds, one, to thank you all for your questions. Awesome questions. I also want to give a shout out. Typically, I wouldn't do this because we don't have this happen all that often. But first, our team over here from NBC4. So hello to everyone. And she's looking like, are you about to do this to me? I am. Cynthia, stand up. Cynthia Hill is our newest anchor and reporter at the station. She'll be anchoring weekend mornings on NBC4 today, but she's getting a little, what do we call, like a dress rehearsal test run right now. So she'll be on. She's on, you were on today, tomorrow and Friday? Okay. So you can check her out. Welcome her. She is from Columbus, and so we're glad to have you here. We got a lot of Columbus folks in the station. So welcome back. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to the one and only Neil Juris.
I'm going to have Carrie do all my introductions. So I hope you found today's forum informative. And as our HUD Secretary Marsha Fudge says, housing is infrastructure. And so I learned that it is more important now than ever to move people who are homeless into safe and stable housing, and is something we should all be committed to and concerned about. So please make plans to join us next Wednesday for Fixing Ohio's Childcare Crisis with another terrific panel. Thank you to today's sponsors, the Edwards Companies, Homeport, NBC4, the Robert Weiler Company, and Steiner Associates. Thank you to our online virtual seat patrons and to the Emergency Response Fund of the Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch and NBC4i. And our special appreciation for today's speakers, Sandy Doyle-Ahern, Sandy Stevenson, John Perez, and our host, Carrie Charles. Thank you all for joining us. We cannot do this without you. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday as the CMC presents another community conversation. Enjoy your day.